investment in American manufacturing right here in America. Now, from day one, President Biden has recognized and been clear
What is up, everyone? Please take a second to hit that like button. The more likes that we get in a short period of time, the more people the algorithm will bring into the chat to come hang out with us and see what's going on. So please hit that like button and let me know how you're doing.
the President's leadership, our economy added almost 6.5 million jobs last year, the most in any year in U.S. history, and our unemployment rate dropped nearly 70%. Make no mistake about it, by any measure, the United States economy is strong. But the fact is, car prices are currently driving a third of inflation. Why? Because we don't have enough chips. Last year, automakers made nearly 8 million fewer cars than they could have because of the semiconductor chip shortage. Electric vehicles, for which the president has set an ambitious goal, 50% of new car sales by the end of the decade, require 2,000 chips. Each EV requires 2,000 chips, more than twice as many as a traditional vehicle. So that's why today's announcement from Intel is so exciting. Semiconductors produced right here in America will allow us to shore up our supply chains, bring down cost, keep manufacturing facilities up and running, and create American jobs. But if we really want to end the chip shortage and ensure our global competitiveness, there's more to do. Today, our semiconductor supply chain is far too dependent on conditions in countries halfway around the world. A COVID disruption, a typhoon, political instability in another country has the potential to shut down an auto facility and harm American families in places like Ohio. The semiconductor industry was created in the United States of America, and it's time for us to lead again. Right now, there's a bill before Congress that would invest $52 billion in semiconductor production. Congress needs to pass that bill to revitalize America's domestic manufacturing. Passing that CHIPS funding is a win for workers, businesses, supply chains, and our economy. So again, Mr. President, thank you for your leadership, and thank you to Intel for choosing America. It's now my great pleasure to introduce Pat Gelsinger, the CEO of Intel. He's a global leader in the semiconductor industry, has been a leader in the industry for decades, and the announcement he'll be making today will create nearly 12,000 jobs in total. And it's a perfect example of what we can do if we invest in America's manufacturing industry again. So with that, I will turn it over to Pat.
Thank you, Secretary Raimondo. Thank you, President. Thank you for my best Ohio friends and the senators. And we look forward to being welcomed into Ohio. I am thrilled to be at the White House today. Such an exciting occasion, historic day for Intel and the global semiconductor industry. And for a farm boy from Pennsylvania, I thought I'd never be here. Today, Intel is announcing plans for an initial investment of more than $20 billion to build 2 new leading-edge fabs in Ohio. I would be remiss not to thank Governor DeWine and his team in Ohio for their fantastic partnership, and I look forward to commemorating this special day together at our event in Licking County, Ohio, later today. This will be our first new manufacturing site in 40 years. And spanning nearly 1,000 acres will be a mega fab location that can accommodate a total of 8 chip factories, or fabs as we call them. What we're announcing today is the first 2, but we hope to build out that full campus. This initial investment is $20 billion, the single largest private sector investment in Ohio history, and we plan to continue to grow this presence. At full build out, this site could grow to as much as $100 billion of total investment over the decade. This impact of a mega site like this is simply profound. A semiconductor factory is not like other factories. It's more like a small city supporting a vibrant community of services, suppliers, and ancillary businesses. You can think about this as a magnet for the entire tech industry. And all of this is creating new jobs. And we plan to invest an additional $100 million over the next decade to help develop and attract a pipeline of skilled talent and bolster research programs throughout the region. Intel's investments will help meet the unprecedented demand for advanced semiconductors, or chips as they are called. As every consumer in America now knows, we've seen disruptions in our supply chain globally. Many products are in back order, and Christmas trees were not nearly as full this year simply because the industry does not have enough chips. Our lives depend on them. And ponder for a moment, what portion of your life is not becoming more digital? Our dependence, the criticality of semiconductors, the brains that are powering critical industries, education, business, medicine, work from home, learn from home, care from home, infrastructure, national security, all of these depend on chips. But as Secretary Raimondo said, most semiconductors today are sourced overseas. As a country, we cannot rely solely on imports for such essential technology. And the only way to address this economic and security risk is to increase our domestic semiconductor manufacturing capacity. That's why last year I announced a historic investment to expand our operations in Arizona and Mexico. And as the company who put silicon into Silicon Valley, and the company that is now the catalyst for the Silicon Heartland, Intel is committed to restoring end-to-end leadership, innovation, and manufacturing here in the US. We are doing our part, but we can't do it alone. The federal government has shown strong bipartisan support for growing this strategic industry. And I'd like to thank President Biden, Secretary Raimondo, and everybody involved in this supporting the semiconductor industry. And I would also like to thank Senator Schumer, Cornyn, and Representatives Matsui and McCall for sponsoring the Chips for America Act. But as Secretary Raimondo said, now Congress needs to finish the job. Our announcement today is motivated by the CHIPS Act. We're putting our chips on the table, as I like to say. We are getting started, but this project will be bigger and faster with the CHIPS Act. The CHIPS Act will help address the long-term impacts of the semiconductor shortage, global supply chain challenges, and associated rising costs faced by American families today. It will also ensure America maintains its leadership role in semiconductor manufacturing and R&D. We welcome the opportunity to work with President Biden, federal and state governments, to transform the turmoil of this time into a recovery that creates world-changing technology to improve the life of every person on the planet. I thank you, and it's now my honor, my pleasure, and something a farm kid from Pennsylvania would have never imagined, that I get to introduce the President of the United States. Mr. President.
Well, you've introduced a kid from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I didn't think it either, so it's great to be with you. Pat, thanks for the introduction, and this is a truly historic investment in America and American workers. This group of Washington reporters have heard me say many times, it's never been a good bet to bet against America. We have the most qualified folks in the world here in the United States of America. And I want to thank Sherrod Brown and Rob Portman, two senators who deserve an enormous amount of credit for us getting to this place right now, bipartisanly. The idea that we can work together is only just beginning to dawn on people here, I think. And I want to thank Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo, who from day one has been helping lead our efforts to strengthen American manufacturing in America and American innovation. Look, Pat just laid out today's big announcement by one of America's most important companies. This historic investment for Ohio, one of the largest investments in semiconductor manufacturing in American history. A brand new $20 billion campus outside of Columbus, Ohio. 7,000 construction jobs, 3,000 full-time jobs. And I was kidding Pat earlier. I said, I may need a job. And he said, well, it's not bad. You start over $100,000 on the line, but I got to get some training. But look, at the singular, look, to be able to say, made in Ohio, made in America, It's what we used to always be able to say 25, 30 years ago. That's what this is about. But folks at home might be wondering why it's such a big deal for manufacturing something so small, the size of a postage stamp. Why is that so important? Well, semiconductors are small computer chips that power virtually everything in our lives. Your phone, your car, your refrigerator, your washing machine, hospital equipment, the internet, the electric grid, and so much more. And here's the deal. America invented these chips. America invented these chips. And federal research and development led to the creation of these chips. Taxpayer dollars. These chips helped power NASA mission to the moon. The federal investment helped bring down the cost of making chips to build a market and an entire industry. As a result, over 30 years ago, America had about 40% of global production. But since that time, something happened. American manufacturing, the backbone of our economy, got hollowed out. Companies moved jobs and production overseas, especially from in the industrial Midwest. Decades ago, we used to invest 2% of our gross domestic product in research and development. Let me say it again. We invested 2% decades ago of our gross domestic product in pure research and development. Today, it's less than 1%. We were ranked #1 in the world in R&D. But guess what? We now rank #9. China was #8 in the world 3 decades ago. Now they're #2. And other countries are closing in fast. As a result, today, we barely produce 10% of the computer chips despite being the leader in chip design and research. And we don't have the ability to make the most advanced chips right now. But today, 75% of the production takes place in East Asia. 90% of the most advanced chips are made in Taiwan. China is doing everything it can to take over the global market so they can try to outcompete the rest of us and have a lot of applications, including military applications. Folks, look, during this pandemic, your pocketbook felt the consequences: inflation, higher prices. Whenever a factory shuts down in one part of the world, the production and shipments of goods to shops and homes and business all over the world gets disrupted. COVID-19 has compounded that problem many times over, especially with these computer chips. As a result, everything from cars to dishwashers are delayed getting to showrooms and customers, just as demand for them is up because the economy is growing. And because supply is low, we find ourselves in a position that we're really behind the curve. Prices are going up. In fact, 1/3 of the recent price increases that have been seen nationally are due to car prices, as mentioned earlier. You know, I'm going to turn to the boss here. What percentage of chips are needed to build the cars today, and what's going to happen in the next 5, 10 years?
4% today, 20% by 2030.
20% by 2030 is going to be required to, that's what the car is made of. 20% of it is going to be these computer chips. Historic as today's announcement is, this is just the beginning. And this is an important part of today's message. Right now, there's a bill in front of the United States Congress, because the two men behind me are pushing it, U.S. Innovation and Competition Act, which includes several of the ideas I proposed last year that would accelerate the progress in a big way. The bill calls for authorizing nearly $90 billion for research and development, manufacturing, and supply chain. Look, including empowering the National Science Foundation to bring together local communities, universities, community colleges, private companies, and more partnerships like this. And by the way, speaking of community colleges, you all know this, the Washington Press Corps does at least. My wife is a community college professor. She said it's the best kept secret in America. This is a community college graduate who skipped his senior year in high school, went to local community college, and then went on. My wife's got to meet you, man.
The best half.
Look, this includes a $52 billion incentive for more companies to build their manufacturing facilities here in the United States of America. I want other cities and states to be able to make an announcement like the one being made here today. And that's why I want to see Congress pass this bill right away and get it to my desk. Let's get another historic piece of bipartisan legislation done. Let's do it for the sake of our economic competitiveness and our national security. Let's do it for the cities and towns all across America working to get their piece of the global economic package. And let's do it for the dignity and pride of this country and the American worker. I made clear while I was running for president and from day one of this administration, we are going to invest in America. We're investing in American workers. We're going to stamp everything we can made in America, especially these computer chips. Vice President Harris and I, along with Secretary Raimondo and our entire team, have met with members of Congress in both parties because this is a bipartisan issue. We brought business and labor together to see where we could ramp up production and help resolve bottlenecks. Soon after I was sworn in, I signed an executive order to revitalize American manufacturing and making our supply chains more resilient to disruptions, whether it's a pandemic, climate change, or cyber attacks. In some cases, building resilience will mean increasing our production here at home. In others, it will mean working more closely with our trusted friends and partners, nations that share our values so that the supply chains do not get used against us as leverage. In fact, I made this clear to President Xi of China. We need not have confrontation, but we have a stiff economic and technological competition, and we're going to insist everyone, including China, play by the same rules. We're going to invest whatever it takes in America, in American innovation, in American communities, and American workers. That's exactly what we're doing here today. As a result of the progress we've made, record economic growth, record job growth, faster economic recovery than any other nation on earth, we are better positioned globally than we have been in a long, long time. Intel's historic investment is one example. It's not the only one. In fact, last year, the largest semiconductor companies, including Samsung and Micron, committed $80 billion to build new facilities in the United States, in Arizona, New York, Oregon, Texas. And why are these companies choosing us, the United States? I think it's because they know we have the most productive workers, the best research universities, a dynamic venture capitalist system, and a rule of law that protects intellectual property. I think we're better positioned than any nation to seize these opportunities. But we have to keep it going. And I think our best days are ahead of us. Last year, we took a big step toward that front with the bipartisan infrastructure law. And I want to thank Senator Brown and Senator Portman for their hard work in getting that done. That law is going to upgrade everything from roads, bridges, ports, airports, railway, transit, to make our economy move faster and reduce prices for families. This is going to create better jobs for millions of Americans all over the country, rural, urban, suburban. And it means America is the most attractive place for companies like Intel to invest and make their products. Because of the law, this year, for the first time in 2 decades, our infrastructure investment will grow faster than China's, for the first time in decades. This is a game changer. Now we have to build on that progress, and that's what this today is about. It includes Congress acting on our competition bill, which I mentioned earlier, and my administration is going to keep using all the tools we have to reshore our supply chains, strengthen our economic resilience, and make more in America. Because at the end of the day, this is about national security, economic security, and it's about jobs. Good paying, decent jobs you can raise a family on. Jobs now, jobs for the future. Jobs in every part of the country, jobs that bring the industrial Midwest back. It shows the world that we're always going to fight for American workers. In fact, these facilities are a symbol of what America's all about. PhD engineers, scientists, alongside community college graduates, as my wife says, they're the best kept secret in America. Pat went on beyond that. But people of different ages, races, backgrounds, working side by side. They're all working together to do the same thing. The most sophisticated manufacturing we have ever seen. Tiny computer chip the size of a stamp. They're showing what I've always believed. There is nothing beyond our capacity as a nation if we do it together as the United States of America. And I want to thank Pat again and Intel. I can't wait to see this next visit that you're about to have in Ohio today. And I want to make one last comment. You know, folks, and I asked Pat this, but I've asked many other corporate leaders around this nation this. when the United States of America, when the government makes a decision to invest considerable amounts of resources in a new industry or in an area that we need to build up, that encourages business to say, they're doing it. This is going to happen. I'll get in too. I asked Pat whether that was part of the judgment. Am I misleading? Am I misstating it at all? And it is, but I just want everybody to understand when, I'm sure there were people who looked at both my colleagues who helped lead the fight in this CHIPS Act we're trying to pass. One, are you going to spend all that money? That money attracts money. It attracts investment. It demonstrates we're all in. So, folks, I'm going to say what I've always said. There's not a damn thing this country can't do. Not a single thing we can't do. You've heard me say it before, and I'm going to say it again. I spent about an hour and a half today with the Japanese Prime Minister on a virtual meeting with our staffs. And I told him about when President Xi asked me, can I define America? When I was in China with him. I said, yeah, one word, possibilities. Possibilities. We can do anything if we put our mind to it. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. And by the way, the reason we're not going to have any time for questions now is these guys got to get quickly on a plane and go out and do a major announcement in Ohio, and you guys will ask me all about Russia and not about anything having to do with chips.
I have a question about this. If you could, how are we going to guarantee the raw materials will be available, since many of them come from without the United States, including some countries like Afghanistan that are in turmoil?
We're working on that. There's a lot not in Afghanistan. We've been finding out and moving on directions to find where the raw materials are. We're making contracts to make sure we have access to them, and we are doing things that we're finding out here in the United States. We have assets we didn't know we had in terms of raw material. Thank you. All right.
What in the hell? So, we found resources we didn't know we had. What does that mean? We're going to hit up other countries for more than just their oil now? We're going to show up and cause conflict so we can get all their little computer chips? Old man Walter never fails to amaze us on how stupid he can be. Goodness. And why'd he turn around through the briefing? Was that briefing not for us? Was that for the, 4 guys standing behind him? He couldn't tell if we were the audience or he was. It probably has something to do with the stage, that fake stage that they built in front of the White House there. He probably wasn't sure if the show was for them or for us, the few reporters in the room. He's like, well, we already have their questions. And then on top of that, we're making excuses to not answer questions now. Has everyone caught on that he doesn't answer questions? He's like, the reason we're not going to answer questions today is because these fake people behind me really need to get on a plane and toss around a couple of kids. Oh my God. Awful people. Either way, let's get ready for the Pledge of Allegiance. And then in 14 minutes, Jen Psaki is supposed to be on stage. So we're just going to keep it running while I'm getting this all set. Make sure you guys hit that like button. The more likes that we get in a short period of time, the more people the algorithm will bring people into the chat and hang out with us and get some lying and crying in from Jen Psaki. So make sure you hit that like button. All right, everyone, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, give me a second. I gotta flip over to the screen where Jen Psaki will be hanging out. Well, I guess they're going to make us wait a second. They got this timer rolling. So I guess Jen Psaki doesn't have any special guests today. I don't know if she just has nothing to say or what, but it's like the last 2-3 times we haven't seen her. She had to bring on some show and tell, bring on some other lizard people. Hi, Dad. Welcome to the live. Tara, you're just gonna say boob slaps, huh? Is that how this chat's gonna go today? We're just gonna blurt out random phrases? All right. Eagle Warrior, you didn't waste no time. You didn't waste no time. Just hop right out there and just get it out of the way. Good Lord, you guys are just waiting for it. That was the sign. So write a random statement. Why not? We got time. Wait on Jen Psaki. You know she's going to be late. Half of them are getting flagged. I can't even read them out loud. YouTube will ban me. Indigo, your Twitch is frozen. I don't know what goes on with Twitch. I think Twitch has something weird about their server. I've heard that live streamers on Twitch get some sort of priority based on their viewers and stuff like that. So maybe there's a lot of live streamers on right now and I don't have priority because I don't have that many people following me on Twitch yet. So maybe that's why it's freezing. I don't know. It looks fine on my end. Okay, everybody going off about the... hold on. Was it boob slap or is it smack? Because it matters. Trust the science. Boob slaps. That's a good thing. If it's a smack, it's not. It's offensive. It's racist. Robert, check out Rachel Maria. Is she on TikTok? One of the hooligans tags me on TikTok all the time. There's somebody that's always impersonating Jen Psaki, and it's spot on. Matt, I ain't got no crush on Jen Psaki. Half the hooligans do though. I just show the hooligans what they want to see. They want to see some lying and crime from the White House. We're gonna cover it. Faded operator, boob abuse. It's only if they don't like it. Robert, she is on TikTok. Yeah, I think I've seen her. She does awesome. She does pretty good. And she'll even incorporate Peter in some of her skits. Spot on. Well, Jill, I was reading your comment until you deleted it. Something about M&Ms. I don't know. I've been reading a lot of articles about people, well, not people, but companies coming through with their decisions on whether or not to mandate their workers to get the jab. Carhartt has folded. They're requiring all their employees to get the jab. But I'm trying to think, there was another company that surprisingly was not requiring. I'm trying to think who it was. It was some liberal company that you would totally think would require jabs, and they decided against it. Jason, Eminem's gone gay and woke. That's because that's the Eminem clone. That ain't the real Eminem. There's no way. I don't believe it's the real Eminem. It seems like all them rappers go to prison or they disappear for a year or two, and then they come back and they look different, they sound different, their tattoos are all different. And it's just like CNN. They just keep saying the same thing over and over again. Like, oh, he just came back out of a hiatus, or he just came back from prison, and don't mind all these changes and whatever. Oh yeah, you guys are on it. Starbucks. Yep, Starbucks does not require their employees to get the jab. I think it's because they can't get people to work. I don't think any fast food could make it through forcing people to get the jab, because they're struggling. Everywhere I go, they're struggling. When it comes to fast food and stuff, they're struggling to keep employees, and I don't blame them. Last time I went out to eat, people were rude as hell. I almost had to uppercut 2 people. Like, don't you know who I am? But yeah, there's no way I could be working in customer service right now. People are rude and nasty. Real life. Your comment is acceptable for a random statement. I can't let it through. People get weird about the R word. Yama. Yeah, Carhartt is requiring jabs. If you work at Carhartt, you get to be a part of the experiment. USA Topsoil. You getting your hair cut, you didn't get the gem ball Psaki and get it all red. But then you gotta like sleep on it and then have your dog like cow lick the side of your head and then go step on stage and don't answer any questions, and boom, it'd be right on the mark. Pickle fingers. You think so? What are you Googling gem ball Psaki? I don't know. You might be a Fed. You might be a Fed if you know what those look like. You might know too much about gem ball Psaki. Got a spy among us. Sorry, I'm trying to read all these chats. Well, thanks, MD. Thanks for being here. Face, you guys all got cowlicks. It runs in your family. I'm gonna be honest, I don't even really know what a cowlick is. I'm pretty sure it's where your hair cycle does its own thing. You're what is it? Eccentric. Yeah. Real life. FBI is the internet. Yeah. What I think is real funny is how many people will send me a message about another user, another hooligan or something. They'll say, oh, I think so-and-so's a Fed. That's it kills me. It just kills me how people categorize each other worrying about Feds. I don't worry about Feds at all. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not worried about federales watching the live or hanging out with the hooligans. We ain't doing nothing wrong. Actually, I remember it was we were covering Corinne, and anybody that didn't have a mask on, she was saying automatically, those are Feds. Those are out here fedding it. I don't know. I don't trust people with masks on. It's all a mind game. What do they call it? Like 4D chess? It's where we are. 69 and drummer. Cowlicks are like alfalfa. I guess that makes sense. Thank you for clearing that up. Thank you so much, Israel Jason, for your donation and your support. I really appreciate you. Israel, Jason. You know, I was thinking the same thing when I was working at the factory I was working at. We were building car parts, and there was a lot of times we would get sent home because there was chip shortages, because most shifters nowadays are made with computer chips inside and uses magnetism and stuff to tell your transmission when to shift gears and all of that. And we were unable to build parts because of the chip shortage. And now here we are. They didn't figured it out. They just got it all figured out. You're going to be able to go buy your new PS5 now and all that. I don't know. Something weird happened to make this switch flip. It didn't just happen because it's Friday. Something happened, you know, in the chain of dominoes to cause this. Diane, that ain't my girl, okay? I know Corinna's fond of me, but that's not my girl. Her, what'd she say? Her bodyguard's mafia. He's real mafia. He ain't fake mafia. He's real mafia. Yeah. Faded operator. Why'd I call you federal operator again? You're the federal operator now. You got to go change your name. You're getting a name change. How cold is it there, Kevin? I'm trying to think. I just checked the weather here. I want to say it's like 16 or something. It's 15 here, but it feels like 0 outside. Like, well, I will stay indoors then. Yeah, I think it's all related to money as well. Doing this chip shortage raises demand. So then they can jack those prices all up. Ball Psaki, any minute now, she'll be wandering on stage as soon as they get her human face on. All right, I see you, Joe USA. Kevin, -11. That's too much. That's too much. I don't get cold, but I don't know if I'd be going outside like that. That's when you gotta start doing science experiments and stuff. See if your spit freezes before it hits the ground, or your ex-girlfriend, or you know, whatever, stuff like that. What's up, status quo? What's up, good sense show? Kendra, you got a sheep mask? That's awesome. You'll have to post a pic in the Discord or something. I'm interested to see what your sheep mask looks like. Matt, no, I don't know anything about that. So, Box Luke, you think I'm a robot? Why am I a robot? What do I gotta do to prove I'm not a robot? No, I don't do gay stuff now. Can I even say that? I probably can't say it. Never mind. You just disregard that. Strike it from the record. What's up, King of Dorks? It's been a minute. I haven't seen you in the chat in a minute. Nah, Mike, don't tell people to lick frozen poles. It's so shocking and scary when you find out how real that really is. Sitting there stuck with your face to a pole. Don't tell people that. Mexican Joker, you're in Florida, 75 degrees. Even that's too hot for me. I know in Florida that's like cold weather, but for me it's too much. I can't do it. As soon as we get over 70 degrees, I gotta like stick an ice cube to my nuggets or something. Like I just can't deal with being too hot. Can't do it. Anthony, yeah, we need a sidebar. We need Judge Pickles come to the stand real quick. Kevin. Is it only 39 days until it's so-called spring? Is that all it is? I was trying not to keep count, but since you bring it up, it's upon us. Spring is coming. March 1st is spring. I'm sure it won't feel like spring. We'll have to do something fun for my birthday. My birthday's on the 11th. We'll celebrate spring. We'll have a snowball fight or something. We'll call Antifa. It'll be a good time. So Box Luke, I'm short all the semiconductors. As soon as old man Walter finds out, he's gonna have to build another factory. I don't know. I don't think he realizes how short we are in these semiconductors. What's up, Steven? Thanks for being here. 69 a drummer. I've been considering putting Judge Pickles on the soundboard. I was trying to get the soundbite of him saying, "Don't get brazen with me," but there's Attorney Chicken Hawk is like in the background talking and stuff, and the soundbite just doesn't sound very clear. I'm working on it. What's up, Stacy? Thanks for being here. Indigo, you guys get a bunch of snow in March? Yeah. I don't know, it's hit or miss. Usually on my birthday, we'll have a heat wave. It'll be like 45 degrees for no reason, and then we'll have a blizzard like the very next day. And where I live, winter could stretch out to the end of May. You get into June, and it could be like 30 degrees, and then on the weekend, it'll be 70. You're getting sunburnt and stuff. Michigan's so weird. It's so weird. Carrie, you're talking about the protest yesterday in Portland. I wasn't able to cover it. I had some stuff I had to go take care of. I had to actually leave the house, which you guys know I hate doing that. But I had to. So I was unable to catch I don't know if it was a protest or it was like a counter rally or what it was. I seen some of it. Whenever I got a chance, I would check it out and see how Mr. Bill was doing. All I seen was him conversing with Wheels. They were kind of going back and forth. I know there's a lot of name calling, screaming, scaredness. There was some sheep batting in the background. That was really all I seen. I didn't see anything too exciting going on. USA Top Soul, I got to dance to prove I'm not a robot. We'll see. Higher chance of me dancing than freestyling. I know Salty Ragu's probably over here crying somewhere. They want me to freestyle so bad. We got to set a checkpoint. I'll do a hooligan rap. Man, my microphone is buzzing. I wonder if it's getting feedback off of my TV. I don't know. I'll mess with it in a second. What's up, Sherry? Thanks for being here. Andrew, yeah, actually, somebody just notified me before we went live that there's supposed to be a big protest tomorrow. Is it tomorrow? No, it's Sunday. Maybe you're talking about a different protest. There's supposed to be a freedom rally in D.C. Sunday, the 23rd at, I believe, 11 a.m. I'm not sure what's going on tomorrow. If you do have a link or a poster or anything like that about activity going on tomorrow, definitely post it in the Discord and tag me so I can get on the schedule. What's up, Jeb? I have no idea how Corinne's doing. I'm sure she'll be live tonight. You guys can all, hit her up and let her know how much you miss her. Sean Solo. Wheels got his hat taken yesterday. Yeah, I didn't see that. Thank you so much, Fans Guy, for your donation and your support. I really appreciate you. USA Forever. Will Johnson's live right now in DC. I know there's something going on right now. And then I know there's something going on Sunday. Awesome, Indigo. I appreciate you. Soapbox Luke, my mic sounds muffled. Weird. I wonder if it's a software issue. My software causes me so many problems. Like yesterday, half my sound bites didn't work, and I shut it off and turned it back on, and then they all worked fine. Like it always seems to be a software issue. What's up, Mark? Thanks for being here. Faded operator. I'm not going to repeat what you said, but I think a lot of people feel that way. Edward, when we hit 60K, I'll have to dance and freestyle. Maybe we'll get some dancing in. I'm waiting for like 100K before we do a freestyle. Maybe I'll send out the lyrics and we'll just sing together. We'll just hit it up. We'll do a hooligan song. Indigo, you got information for the 22nd? Yeah, DM it to me or tag me in it if you've already posted it in the Discord so I can get it on the schedule. Kevin, no, I did not see that. I don't know a whole lot about what's going on in Canada. All I've heard is that they're considering taxing people who don't get the jab. That's really all I've heard about Canada. Peanut Butter Paul, now that I've said your name, everyone's going to read your comment and everyone will know. You're welcome. Steve McCoy, thoughts on the 25th Amendment? I don't know. I'd have to look it up. What's up, Delilah? Thanks for being here. All rise. Maybe your chips are defective. Don't worry. Potato's gonna fix it. I don't know. He breaks all this stuff and then he comes around fixing it and patting himself on the back like, look at all the great things I've done. Calm down, old man. Just calm down before you fall up the stairs again. What's up, Moti? Thanks for being here. It's interesting, Kevin. I'll have to look into that. Yeah, I haven't heard anything about truckers in Canada. Awesome. Thanks, Indigo. I'll get it on the schedule. What's up, Zombie Hunter? Thanks for being here. Thank you so much, Mark Hill, for your donation, your support. I really appreciate you. Snow Possum, they're blocking highways. What are they doing? Parking their trucks like at an angle or something? Or just stopping right there in the lane? Diane, truckers can't deliver from the US to Canada without having the jab. I know there's certain special circumstances where you can cross the border without the jab, but I don't know if we can go there. I think we're allowing Canadians to come here without the jab if they have some sort of clearance, like some sort of business or I can't even remember what they called it. There was a name for it. They used it for everything when the pandemic started. Essential. If you're labeled essential, then you can cross the border without having the sauce. But I don't know if we can go over there. They don't like us. They don't like us over there. I don't know. I think it's funny because Canadians think that we think they're soft, and we think Canadians are really nice, but they actually talk so bad about Americans. It's so funny how the stereotypes are opposite. What's up, hillbilly at heart? Joe USA, I'm not sure exactly what your question is. You mean like, is that the only kind of music I make? What's up, Caboodle? 69 drummer, you got a CDL and you can't get into Canada without the jab? Yeah, it must be for them. I read an article about it that was saying something about the only people allowed to cross, but it must be them coming here, not us going there. Ed, I'm not sure what you're referencing. I'm not sure if you tried to post a link and YouTube kicked it off or what exactly you're referencing. There you go, Soapbox Luke. There you go. That's one way to sell it. Hit the like button so we don't blow my last semiconductor that I'm running off of. Yeah, Jim Ball said she's late. 16 minutes late so far. See a lot of hooligan badges on Twitch. I just got everything set up so we could have our badges. I don't know what it was before. I keep trying to put emojis and stuff on there, but Twitch won't allow it. They say that the H badge is a letter and you can't have emojis that are a single letter. Like, I don't know how they came up with that, but they're flagging my emojis over there, and that's why we don't have anything that great. For now, we'll get it fixed. Sitting here checking all these chats. Ed, nobody can cross without the jab. It just went into effect. Yeah, I wonder when we're going to get on the other side of this. They'll have to make their money first. What's up, Tom? I think that's why they're not doing the lockdowns. You know, man, Walter, he keeps coming out and saying, oh, we're not going to close schools anymore. We're not going to have a lockdown anymore. I think because if we keep locking down and we keep shutting everything off, it's just more proof that their jab don't do what it, you know, they're saying it does. So eventually we're going to have to get on the other side of this stuff going on, because that would be the proof that it works, right? Is that eventually it comes to an end. We'll see. We'll see how they play this off. Thank you so much, Captain Seamus, for resubscribing on Twitch. I really appreciate you. You're officially a hooligan. What's up, Hydrodynamic? What's up, Tiny? Elizabeth or H. Elizabeth. I think you're right. I think that they're going to try and stretch this out as much as they can. But I think ultimately it'll have to come to an end. Otherwise, they're not looking so secure on the effectiveness of what they're trying to hand out to everybody. So I think eventually it'll have to come to an end, and then they can be like, look at all the great things we did. Everybody's got this special sauce, and please don't die, and it'll be okay. Yeah. Salty Ragu, borders are oppressive. Yeah, borders are racist. The horses that walk along the border, those are racist. The reins on the horses are racist. So we need to punish the Border Patrol for doing their job. Where's Jim Psaki now? I got to do all the lying and crying for the White House? Come on now. What's up, Lion's Heart? Thanks for being here. Thanks so much, Mark Hill. UK is practicing freedom. They're done with the mandates in the UK? What? I'm going to have to read up on that. The UK, that's one of old man Walter's buddies there that he's trying to team up with. I thought they were going in full oppression mode. King of Dorks, CDC's new study finds the natural immunity is better than the jab. It says that on the CDC website? Interesting. I have a few friends that still work in the factory I was working in, and they're getting their rights stepped on left and right as much as those managers can get away with it. See if I can find some stuff on the CDC website. Maybe they can dig themselves out of the hole. That job is crazy. They're like, hey, you got to give us your lunch because the CDC says so. We're going to eat it right off your plate, and there's nothing you can do about it. We'll see what that says. Have to check it out. You got to read the CDC website like every day to stay up to date with what you're allowed and not allowed to do anymore. Stupid. All Rise. That's a good idea. I have not been asked that before. We will definitely put a car club channel on the Discord. I know a lot of people want to talk about pews and stuff, but Discord has their own community guidelines that we have to follow. So number one question is, can we get a channel with pews? And we cannot. People will get that Discord banned in a heartbeat. But cars, we can definitely do cars. Oh, getting some action here. Where's Peter been? He was like dying from the plague. Came back for a day or two, and that was that. Then they got him. He was Clintoned. No, I'm not going to say that, but I hope not. Hope he wasn't Clintoned. What's up, Poppin' Plugs? Thanks for being here. What's up, Shane? XRP, I guess. I guess you're right. Those are nooses hanging off those horses. It's racist horses. I ain't never seen a horse want to commit a hate crime so bad in my life. Those Border Patrol horses, racist. Dynamite. Yeah, I'm going to have to look that up when I get off the live here, because I did not realize that the UK had stepped away from the mandates. All rise. Will you go on the Discord and like general chat, write down that we need a car club channel and then tag me so I don't forget?
Okay. I just have 2 items for all of you at the top. As you all saw, today the President delivered remarks on his administration's work to increase the supply of semiconductors, boost manufacturing in America, and rebuild our supply chains here at home.
Hit that like button really quick, everyone.
Price increases, create good-paying manufacturing and construction jobs across the country, and strengthen our economy. For 3 decades, America has lost semiconductor manufacturing to countries like China, but since President Biden took office, that tide has turned. He's prioritized investing in critical supply chains like chips and set out a clear path to do so with his executive order. And he brought together labor and business to get it done. In doing so, we've catalyzed the industry's outlook and gave them confidence in America again, including Intel's announcement today of a $20 billion investment in Ohio and a total of over $80 billion invested since he took office. This is the power the president is using to make it in America, to support his Made in America vision. He's putting it into action. Those sorts of investments have never been more important, particularly as we see a global shortage of chips driving up prices of cars right here in America. As we know, it counts for about 1/3 of the inflationary pressure, with auto prices contributing as a big part of that. Today's announcement is just the latest progress in our efforts to ramp up domestic manufacturing, tackle near-term bottlenecks, especially with critical goods like semiconductors. Earlier this year, Samsung, Texas Instruments, and Micron announced $80 billion in investments in semiconductor manufacturing. Congress can accelerate this progress by passing the U.S. Investment and Competition Act, also known as USICA, which the president has long championed and which he called for action on today. This bipartisan legislation puts historic funding behind unclogging our supply chains, research and development, innovation, and advanced manufacturing in every corner of America, and invest $52 billion in making more chips, something that's vital to address our supply chains and lower inflation. Tomorrow also marks the 49th anniversary of the Supreme Court's landmark ruling in Roe v. Wade. Reproductive health care has been under extreme and relentless assault ever since, especially in recent months. It has been nearly 150 days since women in Texas have been denied these constitutional rights. We're deeply committed to making sure everyone has access to care, and we will defend it with every tool we have. That includes continuing to work with Congress to pass the Women's Health Protection Act and codify this fundamental right into law. In the meantime, the administration has taken a range of important actions, from repealing the global gag rule to strengthening Title X family planning program. Today, HHS announced additional Title X grants, and there will be further announcements coming from HHS later as well. This is a moment for us to recommit to strengthening access to critical reproductive health care, defending the constitutional right established by Roe, and protecting the freedom of all people to build their own future. I know we have a short time window today. We will keep up to date on when everybody needs to gather, and I'll try to get to as many people as possible, and otherwise I'll be here in my office. Go ahead, Omar.
Thank you, Jen. When the U.S. presents its written response to Russia next week, is it willing to offer Russia something that goes beyond the repeatedly stated positions, particularly when it comes to Russia's demands on guarantees regarding NATO's future expansion?
We will put in writing, as you referenced, the serious concerns that we and other allies and partners have about Russia's actions, as well as ideas for how we might actually strengthen each other's sense of security going forward. There are several steps we can take. that are being discussed. All of us, Russia included, to increase transparency, to reduce risk, to advance arms control, to build trust. We're coordinating with our allies and partners, and we anticipate that Secretary Blinken and Foreign Minister Lavrov will meet again to continue discussions. And the president obviously is regularly briefed every day by his team, but will also be engaging with them tomorrow over the course of the weekend as well. But as Secretary Blinken said today, he made clear to Foreign Minister Lavrov that there are certain issues and fundamental principles that the United States and our partners and allies are committed to defend. And that includes those that would impede the sovereign right of the Ukrainian people to write their own future. There's no trade space for there, none. And we've said from the beginning that there are certain proposals that will not be viable. But we will, of course, be responding, as you noted, and I expect the president will continue to discuss that over the next couple of days with his team.
I wanted to ask another foreign policy question. The strike in Yemen today, 70 people were dead, are dead after the Saudi-led coalition strike. National Security Advisor Sullivan immediately condemned the recent Houthi strike. What's the administration's immediate reaction to this strike? And does this prompt any reconsideration of weapon sales to Saudi Arabia?
I don't have any prediction of that at this point in time. Obviously, we have a long history of a relationship with Saudi Arabia, one where we raise issues where we have significant concerns on human rights and on a range of issues, and one where we have had a long security relationship that has been in the interest of the United States. In terms of this specific strike and a reaction, obviously, anytime there's a loss of life, of innocent lives, that is a tragedy, and we are mindful of that and focused on that. Obviously, you know our focus and the president's focus, which is from the very beginning, he established new interim guidance concerning the United States use of military force and related to national security operations. That's how we operate here as the United States, which I think is reflective of his view. But certainly, the loss of life is always a tragedy. And again, if there's anything new on our relationship, I'm happy to get that from our national security team.
And just one last domestic on tax season. With reduced staffing levels, less funding authorization from Congress, and IRS already tasked with distributing funds for several pandemic relief programs. Many 2020 refunds haven't been processed. How is the administration preparing to ensure that this year's tax returns will be processed in a reasonable amount of time?
Well, I would first note that a lot of this predates this administration, and you touched on that, but I think that's important for people to understand. As the Treasury Department and the IRS have said, the IRS right now has an unacceptable backlog, and that customer service that people are receiving is not what the American public deserves, and the president is very mindful of that. Many of those challenges are related to the pandemic, but also due to years of underfunding from Congress. The agency has not been equipped with the resources it needs to adequately serve taxpayers in normal times, let alone during a pandemic. The president has prioritized ensuring the IRS gets $80 billion of stable multi-year funding, resources it needs to best serve the American people. As he said in his executive order in December on customer experience, the American people deserve an effective, equitable, and accountable government that meets the needs of its people. So we would call on Congress to act now to give the IRS the funding it needs to meet its goal. But again, in terms of addressing the backlog, it's going to take some work, it's going to take some time, and I think people need to understand that they need funding, but there's a long history here that's led to this moment.
Go ahead. Thank you, Jen. Secretary Blinken is leaving Geneva, and so far does not appear that he has a firm commitment from Russia not to invade Ukraine. So is another summit necessary at the leader level? Do you anticipate that President Biden will be having a summit with President Putin, the president of Ukraine?
Well, let me first say that Secretary Blinken, as you mentioned, met in Geneva today with Foreign Minister Lavrov to share our serious concerns with the situation. He warned Russia that we are prepared to respond to any Russian invasion of Ukraine with swift and severe consequences, along with our allies and partners. We're also ready to continue dialogue and diplomacy. Ultimately, this has always been putting the choices up in front of President Putin and the Russians, right? It is up to them to decide which path they are going to choose. Secretary Blinken also conveyed we didn't expect any breakthroughs to happen today, but we are on a clearer path in terms of understanding each other's concerns. The president will meet this weekend at Camp David with his national security team to discuss the situation. Some will be virtual, some will be there in person. We'll also continue to consult with our allies and partners, and we will respond next week in writing, as I conveyed. In terms of the president and his role, I think part of that will be discussing with Secretary Blinken and his national security team what the appropriate next steps are. Of course, the president always values leader-to-leader engagement, but we'll determine if that's the appropriate next step.
He's open to that.
He's always been
Potential
open.
next step, and that's on the table.
It may or may not be the next step, and I can't give you a prediction of if and when it will happen, but if that is the step that is recommended and that we think would be effective at this point in the discussion, of course, the president's always open to leader-to-leader engagement.
Let me ask you about something that Secretary Blinken said. He told Ukrainian TV that whether it's one Russian soldier or 1,000 crossing the border, it's an attack on Ukraine. Does the president agree with that statement? Is that how he sees it?
That's the president's policy that he has directed as Secretary of State to continue to convey, and what the president conveyed to President Putin.
Let me ask you about the Electoral Count Act, if I could. Based on some of my conversations on Capitol Hill, and obviously there seems to be a growing consensus that there might be able to be some progress on the Electoral Count Act. Someone said to me that it could potentially be a vehicle to get pre-clearance passed. Is that something that this White House thinks is a possibility, is a likelihood? Is that what the president's going to be pushing for?
I don't have any prediction of a process or a vehicle. What I would remind everyone of is that despite the fact that 16 Republicans in the Senate have in the past supported the protection of voting rights, they did not when given the opportunity. Again, I would note that the Electoral Count Act is something we are certainly open to, but it is not a replacement for. And there are many components of the voting rights legislation that are vital to protecting people's rights in this country, including the fact that we know that voter suppression largely impacts communities of color across the country. And one of the components of the voting rights legislation the president's been fighting for is requiring states that have a history of voter suppression to get approval to change their laws. It also, these voting rights legislation that we've been fighting so hard for would also ensure that there's a fundamental baseline of what people can know and expect. If you're a mother of 3, you should be able to have many places you can drop off your ballot or vote. This is not a replacement for that. In terms of a vehicle or what's possible, I don't have anything on that to read out for you.
Just very quickly, it seems like there are going to be some discussions during break between lawmakers, bipartisan lawmakers, about the Electoral Count Act and where they can find consensus on this. What can we expect the president's role to be, given that he's been very clear he is going to be taking a new strategy as it relates to reaching out to the American public?
Well, the president can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think what people can expect is that he's going to spend more of his time engaging with, talking with the American people and talking about how far we've come and where we need to go from here. He also has a very talented and experienced team that's already engaged in a range of conversations with Congress. But I can tell you from spending a lot of time with the president and in the Oval Office with him that sometimes he just picks up the phone and calls a member of Congress or a senator when you're sitting there. So no one's suggesting that he's not going to engage with members. What we're conveying and what you heard from him the other night is that as you look at the time he's going to spend over the next couple of months, it's not going to be hours and hours behind closed doors in the Oval Office. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. Why would the U.S. agree to submit written answers to Russia, given that it could undermine or be used to discredit the U.S. negotiating position? And is the U.S. asking for any written responses from Russia?
Well, no one sees it that way from the U.S. negotiating team or from our partners and allies around the world. I think what we're engaged in here is seeing what's possible as it relates to diplomacy. And as I noted, it's not written answers like we're filling out a Q&A. We're also going to convey what our concerns are and reiterate a number of the strong statements you've heard the President and Secretary Blinken convey very publicly. So this is just a part of the diplomatic process and diplomatic negotiations, and has been a standard part of the process often with countries and nations where you have agreements but also disagreements.
Does the president have a plan to evacuate Americans from Ukraine?
I know there have been a range of reports out this morning, which is probably why you're asking, Jackie. I will say that, one, we are already at a level 4 travel advisory for Ukraine for COVID and have advised that U.S. citizens have been advising that U.S. citizens should be aware of reports that Russia is planning for significant military action against Ukraine. We do conduct rigorous contingency planning, as we always do in the event of any security situation deteriorates in any country around the world. The State Department does that assessment. I would point you to them for any predictions or previews of any steps they may take.
Is there any effort right now to get a handle on how many Americans are in Ukraine? Because I remember with Afghanistan, that was sort of an open question. Is the dynamic different this time?
It's an open question around the world. We don't put a chip in Americans when they go to countries around the world and track their movements. People can register with the State Department. That's something they do. Or they may choose not to register. Or there might be people in any country around the world who are dual citizens who haven't lived in or have never lived in the United States. But the State Department would certainly have the number in terms of Americans who have registered with the State Department.
And then, is the president aware that he was caught on a hot mic yesterday? And why does he appear to be dismissing the idea of proactive deterrence?
Well, the president certainly does not dismiss that idea, considering he has taken a lot of steps, including supporting and approving the several sanctions that were put out by the Treasury Department just a couple of days ago. I would note that the United States has delivered more security assistance to Ukraine in the last year than any point in history. In the last year alone, we committed $650 million in security assistance to Ukraine. In total, since 2014, we have committed $2.7 billion. These deliveries are ongoing, including today. There's more deliveries coming. In addition to traditional security assistance, such as the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, the President has authorized the Presidential Drawdown Authority to expedite lethal aid and meet Ukraine's emergency defense needs. We've also utilized third-party transfers authorized by the State Department, allowing U.S. allies and partners to provide U.S. origin equipment from their inventories for use by Ukraine. Specifically, the State Department has given the go-ahead for 3 NATO allies to rush anti-armor missiles and other U.S.-made weapons to Ukraine. And finally, in identifying additional equipment held in DoD inventories that can be delivered under the Excess Defense Articles Program, among other mechanisms, we recently notified Congress of our intent to deliver M17 helicopters. So I would say the President is hardly waiting. Actions are pretty clear on that front.
And then I want to ask you about something that you said yesterday.
Sure.
You told me in response to it was a Ukraine question, it's important to remember who the aggressor is here. The aggressor is Russia and Putin. They are building up military troops. They are pushing out misinformation in Ukraine. So why does it seem like U.S. officials are so concerned about being seen as escalating things if Russia has created this whole crisis?
Because I think we want the American public and also the global community to be clear-eyed about propaganda. And they are pushing propaganda about Ukrainians. Certainly there's propaganda pushed here in the United States, but this is about a potential foreign conflict. It's about the buildup of troops by one power that is a much larger military power than the other on the border, and we want to be very clear with the public about the realities and the facts.
One final question on a different topic.
Yeah.
On crime, yesterday the Manhattan DA clarified his memo about downgrading certain crimes, and he said armed robberies, for instance, will be prosecuted as felonies, violence against police officers won't be tolerated, clearing up some of the confusion around how that office intended to prosecute crimes. Does the White House have a reaction to that or welcome that kind of clarification, given that these questions do keep resurfacing?
I don't have any reaction from here to the decisions of a local district, I think a district prosecutor or a district attorney, DA. I would say that the president, and he'll talk about this, he'll talk about crime. And you asked me about this yesterday, but I think can expect to hear him talk a little bit about crime during his remarks later this afternoon. The president believes that no one in this country should worry about whether it's safe to ride the subway or the bus or go to work or walk home at night. And that's why he's put more cops on the beat, has stepped up efforts to get illegal guns off the streets, and invested in proven community anti-violence programs. It's also why he's doubled federal support for community policing with $300 million more for cities, plus another $700 million more to bolster federal law enforcement. We've been working with mayors and local leaders on this, but I think the president's record, his commitment, speaks for itself. Go ahead.
First, just a quick follow-up to what you said about the U.S. agreeing to put a response in writing. Are you saying that the world should not view that as the United States making a concession to Russia?
I think you should see what it has to say. But it's part of a negotiation. We've been very clear about what we are not negotiating on, which is the sovereignty of Ukraine, which is this question that is continuously raised about Ukraine's right to pursue joining NATO. That's up to NATO countries to make that decision. And you've heard the president, Tony Blinken, and others say time after time that we are not making any decisions about Ukraine without Ukraine, no decisions about Europe without Europe. But negotiating takes many forms. It takes forms where you're in person. It takes forms where there's an exchange of written materials. That's pretty standard and has been in diplomacy for decades.
I know you've been asked something similar, but yesterday again, Minority Leader McConnell said that the U.S. should send forces to shore up NATO's eastern flank, not if and when Putin escalates, but now before it's too late. What is your response? Why wait?
Well, first of all, we work in close coordination with our NATO partners and allies and respond to what their needs are. We've been very clear, and the president's been clear, that we will support whatever their needs are, should they have security needs, but I don't have anything more to predict for you at this point in time.
And if I may ask one quick domestic question, just yesterday you were talking again about the idea of chunking off parts of Build Back Better.
Yeah,
You could get
chunking,
60
a bad word.
whatever.
Maybe not the right phrase.
What's the better word? Splitting off, breaking apart, seeing if there was a certain policy proposal that you maybe could get 60 votes on. Anything else you can tell us about which policy proposal you guys might feel hopeful about? Is it universal pre-K? Is it paid sick leave? Where do you guys feel like you might actually be able to get 10 Republicans?
Well, you tell me. Is there a proposal where there are 10 Republicans? I'm not aware of one. Maybe there is. And there are some senators who have been out there saying they support different components. I know Senator Romney has said he supports or is open to some component of the child tax credit. He's not the only one. Are there 10 Republicans they can get to support that? Great, let us know. We're happy to have a discussion about it. That's not what the president was talking about the other night. What the president was talking about is getting as much, although we're very open to that, but what the president was talking about is we have 50 votes in the Senate. We're going to get as much, a big mountain-sized chunk, whatever you want to call it, as much as we can of the Build Back Better agenda that we can get 50 votes for. There is clear agreement on some key goals, right? Lowering the cost of childcare, negotiating the price of prescription drugs, lowering the cost of elder care, making sure the wealthiest Americans and companies have to pay more, and the unfairness of the tax system. So what we have to figure out is how much of that we can get and get approval for.
So it sounds like your focus is still on a reconciliation partisan package.
Absolutely. It's not that it's not, but you tell me, or I know you've covered the Hill before, but are there 10 Republicans who are supporting? We'd be happy to. We don't actually. It's kind of a mystery.
I remember when Ivanka Trump was up there talking about.
Well, listen. If there are 10 Republicans who want to come support the child tax credit or something else, great. They're welcome. Let's have a conversation about it. But that's not. I don't really know why. None of us know why they're ceding the ground on supporting the lowering the cost of childcare to us. But so far they have. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Over the weekend, insurers started paying for at-home tests, or you could apply for reimbursement. But Medicare is not. I know that Medicare recipients can go through their doctors, and some through Advantage programs can get reimbursement, but broadly, members of the program can't. And I'm wondering why not. This seems like a group that you would most want to sort of be vigilantly testing before going to gatherings, as they're elder and therefore most at risk for COVID, and especially since you said yesterday that you had all the money that you needed to fight COVID right now. Why isn't the government paying for these tests?
Well, first, there are a couple things that are happening. You kind of glossed over some of them, but let me give you some specifics. So state Medicaid and CHIP programs are required to cover at-home COVID tests. CMS has also issued guidance to states to effectuate this requirement under Medicaid rules. There are a lot of people who are eligible for Medicaid out there, just to be clear, and CHIPS program. And people who are covered by original fee-for-service Medicare. Medicare pays for COVID diagnostic tests performed by laboratories such as PCR and antigen tests. For Medicare, we're also continuing to explore the best ways to provide critical resources that will keep Medicare beneficiaries safe and healthy, as you touched on. So in addition to PCR tests, rapid PCR tests, and rapid point-of-care antigen tests, are available at 20,000 sites across the country. We've also sent 50 million out to community health centers and rural health centers, but we're also exploring a range of options. So I'm not ruling anything out, but I just wanted to note there are a range of ways that different forms of insurance, even if it's not traditional private insurance, have been covering not just in doctor's office, but also at-home tests as well.
The Federal Reserve issued a report yesterday saying that they're weighing the possibility of launching a digital U.S. currency. They said as part of the report that they were asking for public feedback and would be engaging with lawmakers. So I know that you normally defer to the independence of the Fed, but this is an instance where they're openly soliciting sort of advice and consultation. And so I'm wondering, this is something that could impact our competition with China. It could have an impact in many ways on especially low-income Americans. So does the White House have an opinion on this sort of question for the Fed?
I think it's unlikely we'll weigh in from here, as much as they've asked for public comment, but I can certainly check with our economic team and see.
The Times yesterday had a report about some internal memos, but they also said that there was that you guys are setting up executive actions on clemency for drug offenders and police department reforms. Can you give any sort of time? Can you confirm that that's kind of coming and give any sort of timeline about when we'll be hearing from the president on that?
So on clemency, the president has talked about. We have talked a little bit about the president wanting to deliver on his commitment to consider clemency requests for nonviolent drug offenders. That is something that's ongoing. I don't have anything to preview for you in terms of the timeline, but absolutely the fact that we have every intention of doing that is accurate, or he has every intention. On police reform, I think we said at the time that we're holding back on executive action because we wanted to give space and room for the bipartisan negotiations to move forward, because of course federal legislation would be the preference because it's permanent. But we have been considering and looking at, I don't have anything to predict for you in terms of the timing, but we have been and are looking at that through the policy teams. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. The president on Wednesday, when he was talking about keeping schools open, referenced the tens of billions of dollars that were sent out in the COVID rescue plan. And he said that quote, not every district has used it as well as it should be used. What states or school districts is he referring to there? Because he's talked about this now twice in the last couple of weeks.
Sure. Well, thank you for that first, because it's freezing in here, I think, as everyone can confirm. But I would say, Karen, so one, what people should understand first is 98% of schools are open currently. It fluctuates a little bit, but 98% as of today. School districts, for the most part, are spending federal relief funding by and large across the country. Part of what the president's message he wanted to hammer home when he spoke the other night, and as you said, he's talked about this a little bit, is to spend the money right now for any school that has some left, or maybe some haven't spent all of it, and I'll get to that in a moment. And it's important for any of these school districts to know that different school districts spend it in different ways. So in DeKalb County in Georgia and Desert Sands in California, they're investing in safety measures like ventilation. Cut Bank School District in Montana are increasing pay and providing bonuses to help retain educators and staff. There's lots of ways to use it and spend it for those who haven't done it. But we're continuing to exert pressure anywhere that hasn't. So in terms of, an example would be Florida, where they have done little to distribute money, to little to no steps to distribute money to state across the state and to school districts. Now, part of it is you have to write a plan for how you're going to keep schools open to get the third tranche of money, and some have been delayed in that. But right now, that's an example of a state that could do more.
You just said, we're exerting pressure. How is the White House, obviously this money goes out to states.
Yeah.
Right? But how is the White House exerting pressure?
The
How are
Department
you
of
making
Education is really the primary conduit here, but they have been working and continuously in touch with school districts and states across the country from the beginning.
And is there a way, from the Department of Education perspective, to have a public accounting so Americans can see where that money is going toward, the taxpayer money?
We, of course, work to ensure there's no waste, fraud, and abuse, and we are very closely in touch with how it's being spent with states, and I can certainly check and see if there's a public accounting bill.
One quick one. It's been 4 days since COVIDtest.gov has been live. How many Americans have ordered tests so far, and is the plan still to start sending them out next week?
Yes, they will be sent out very soon. I don't have an updated number of how many have been ordered. It's changing constantly. I expect we will have more of an update on that hopefully by next week. I know we have to wrap up. Go ahead.
On Build Back Better, first, does the White House need this bill to be passed by State of the Union? Is that the goal? Congress kind of needs deadlines.
We have not set a deadline on that. We want to get it done as quickly as possible.
Does it need to have a different name? Speaker Pelosi suggests that perhaps it does.
We'll see. Do you have any ideas?
Actually.
You guys are all wordsmiths.
No, wait, no, I've got a few
Yeah.
more. On the Electoral Count Act.
Yes.
I know you said that the president has many conversations on a wide range of topics with lawmakers on the Hill. But here's the question. It's a bipartisan group right now. Is he going to let them work on their own for the moment, or is he getting engaged with the Manchin-Collins group now, as far as you know?
Our team is closely engaged with all of the members who are discussing every component of any legislation that is being discussed on the Hill, including this.
One more, sorry,
yeah.
one more. 'Cause I'm
Let me go to Jeff, because I just don't want to run out of, we got to wrap up so you guys can gather. Go ahead, Jeff, sorry.
Thanks, Jen. This happened right before the briefing. A federal judge in Texas has ruled that President Biden's mandate for federal workers to be vaccinated cannot go through. Do you have a reaction to that?
Well, first, let me update you that 98% of federal workers are vaccinated. That is a remarkable number. I would point you to the Department of Justice on any next steps as this news, it sounds like, just broke. But obviously, we are confident in our legal authority here.
And you had an event with Intel today. Is the White House concerned about Intel's presence in China?
We have obviously spoken about concerns we have had. I'm not familiar with all of the specifics of their engagement in China, so I'd have to check with our team. We have not held back, I should say, if we have concerns about engagement in parts of the country where there are human rights abuses. We also do, at the same time, work with a range of companies, even when we voice our concerns about issues that we don't agree with. Let me do this the last one, Linda.
Another Intel question.
Okay.
So they're planned for a $20 billion semiconductor facility in Ohio. How can this be viewed as an immediate solution to the chip shortage if the plants won't fully be online until 2025?
Well, I think our view is it's an important step forward in ensuring that we have manufacturing capacity here in the United States so that we don't have a chip shortage in the future. But we also, the president called for the passing of USICA, I just reiterated at the top of the briefing, so that we can get that $52 billion in semiconductor investment to get more going now.
What's the holdup with USICA in the House? Pass the Senate along.
I think Speaker Pelosi made clear she wants to move it forward. So we're eager, the president's eager to have it signed. Okay, I'm sorry, I gotta wrap it up, guys. You guys gotta gather. I'll see you soon.
Does the president like meatloaf?
I don't, what's the phrase? I would do anything for love? Is that part of it? Yeah, that's right. He might say that.
All right, everyone. Well, in 5 minutes, we have a C19 briefing from the team of Nazis. I don't know if they're trying to get everything out of the White House today or what. It's busy today. So I'm going to set up for that live, but then we're going to see what's going on outside in D.C. because I guess there's like rallying and marching and stuff like that. So we're going to check that out while we're waiting for the Nazi team to get their stuff together. So just a moment.
Everybody, bro, like that.
It's also the land of loose nuts and bolts. I'd much rather be here in Washington, D.C. Yeah, yeah, we can. Yeah, we can. Hey, so I'm in the street walking up to the Supreme Court now. About halfway there. Okay, okay, bye. Okay, bye. Ooh. All right, so everyone who's watching right now, you want me to carry a little bit? I can. I'm not like somebody else. I'm not gonna say the name on here. You know who I'm talking about.
Well, I'll put the legs down, then I can carry it like
Okay,
this.
here, hold this.
Keep it a little
and
more
I'll do the
steady.
legs. Yep, you just hold that and I'll do the legs. Want to do all of them? Or is that good there?
I'm not gonna be able to carry it. Keep going down.
Let me go this way, look. Do the next one too?
Yeah.
All right, let's do that.
All right, got it. I got it.
Got it?
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Better? Management, huh? All right. Again, for those who are watching, we are in Washington, D.C. at the March for Your Life, where we're going down the street where they're going to be marching. We're headed up to the Supreme Court now. The march starting on the National Mall and going all the way to the Supreme Court because they're wanting the Supreme Court to do the right thing for both the mother and the child. Share the video, please share the video. And a Komodo?
Huh?
And a Komodo?
Gemini.
It's nice.
Hey, what's up, Stern? Thanks for being here.
Can you do the scooter and hold the camera too?
Yeah, but I need to get the I need to get that one that has two wheels. And you just take one.
Yeah. I'm looking to get one of those too. Because they have hands free.
I normally keep a clip. I can just clip the camera.
Oh, okay. Say the one time you don't bring it, huh?
I got it. It's sitting in the trunk.
You bring them Sunday then?
Yeah.
Here, we'll stop this feed.
You want to do it at the curb?
Yeah. Let's just go over. Huh?
All right, we're gonna switch over to the White House really quick. They don't have nothing going on over here anyways. We'll come back to this after the White House.
We have seen during other phases of this pandemic, the surge in cases started at different times in different regions and may continue to see high case counts in some areas of the country in the days and weeks ahead. Today, I would like to discuss 3 new reports being released by CDC that provide a look at vaccine protection against Omicron, including the added protection provided by booster doses. These reports add more evidence to the importance of being up to date with COVID vaccinations. That means getting your primary series and getting boosted when eligible to protect against severe COVID-19. The first report published today in CDC's Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, or MMWR, examines the effectiveness of mRNA vaccines and how they've been preventing emergency room visits, urgent care clinic visits, and hospitalizations. The blue line on this slide represents the period when Delta variant was dominant. Vaccine effectiveness against emergency room and urgent care visits for those who received their primary series was 76% at 6 months after receiving the second shot. As you can see, following a third shot, vaccine effectiveness increased up to 94%, even higher than it was in the first 6 months after vaccination. Now, still looking at emergency room and urgent care clinic visits, vaccine effectiveness against Omicron is displayed by the red line. In general, we see lower overall vaccine protection against Omicron as we saw against the Delta variant shown by the blue line, especially with just 2 doses of an mRNA vaccine. For those who received the first 2 doses, vaccine effectiveness was 38% against emergency room visits and urgent care visits after 6 months. However, vaccine effectiveness increased up to 82% for those who received their booster dose. The effectiveness of the booster dose is close to the level of protection that was experienced for those with boosters during the Delta wave. The next slide shows vaccine effectiveness against hospitalizations, both with the Delta variant, again, the blue patients. An additional study also published today by CDC scientists in JAMA further adds to this evidence. This JAMA report similarly shows that a booster or third dose of the Pfizer or Moderna COVID-19 vaccine provides greater protection against symptomatic COVID-19 disease for both the Omicron variant and the Delta variant compared to the primary series alone. To further demonstrate the protection of boosters, we're publishing data in MMWR on CDC's COVID data tracker as well that look at cases and deaths by vaccination status. In these data, you can see significantly lower case and death rates among those who are boosted compared to those who are unvaccinated. The graph on this slide displays data from 28 jurisdictions, representing over 2/3 of the US population. The blue shaded area represents the time that the Delta variant was dominant, and the pink shaded area when Omicron variant is dominant. As you can see, case rates are highest among those who are unvaccinated, represented by the black line on the top graph. Case rates are lower for those who have received their primary series, represented by the light blue dotted line, and lower still for those who have received their booster dose, represented by the solid blue line at the bottom of the graph. During December, when Omicron was first emerging, unvaccinated adults had a 5 times higher risk of infection when compared to adults who had received a booster dose. The data here show that the protection provided by vaccines and the importance of being up to date on your COVID-19 vaccination, which for tens of millions of Americans means getting your booster dose. Taken together, these data highlight 2 important points. First, those who remain unvaccinated are at significantly higher risk for infection and severe COVID-19 disease. Second, protection against infection and hospitalization with the Omicron variant is highest for those who are up to date with their vaccination, meaning those who are boosted when they are eligible. There are still millions of people who are eligible for a booster dose and have not yet received one. As we continue to face the Omicron variant, representing over 99% of infections in the United States today, I urge all who are eligible to get their booster shot to get it as soon as possible. Thank you. I'll now turn things over to Dr. Fauci.
Thank you very much, Dr. Walensky. What I'd like to do over the next several minutes is to answer a question that's shown on this first slide. And that is, when new variants arise, why do immune protection against infection diminish much more so than does protection against severe disease? And what are the immunological mechanisms that account for that and account for what Dr. Walensky just described clinically to you a moment ago? These are somewhat technical concepts, but I'd like to give you the bottom line message from each of these. Next slide. When one thinks about either infection or vaccination, although there are a lot of things on this slide, the fundamental basic message is that there are two limbs of the response. The B cell limb, which provides the antibodies that we measure when we show you neutralizing titers. Those B cell responses can give antibodies, but also memory. Namely, when they see an antigen again, which I'll explain in a moment, they respond quickly. The other limb of the immune response is the T cell limb, which in some respects helps the B cells to make antibody, but have function of their own, both direct function and memory function. So now I want to describe some of the terminology that you probably are hearing about when new scientific papers come out. So here's some simplified explanation of these very complex responses. An antibody that's made by B cells primarily prevents initial infection. They are more specific than T cells, and their half-life or their durability in the plasma are shorter lived, but they are backed up by memory cells that are more durable. T cells, however, generally prevent the progression of a disease, namely prevent progression of an infection you already have by eliminating the virus-infected cells. They have a greater breadth, namely they are more cross-reactive in many respects than antibodies. Next slide. Now, when you talk about the, can I have the next slide, please? When you talk about the antigens and epitopes, an antigen is a molecule capable of stimulating an immune response. So viruses themselves are big antigens, and parts of viruses are also antigens. But the antigens themselves have many components. We refer to them as epitope. Why does that mean anything to us? It does because B cells specifically respond and react to B cell epitopes. Namely, antibodies recognize certain parts of an antigen, and T cells recognize certain parts of an antigen, and they're called T cell epitopes. When you give an antigen in a vaccine, we refer to it as an immunogen. So let's take a look at what that means and why it's important to understanding the clinical issues. Next slide. So this is a picture schematically of the now spike of the coronavirus of SARS-CoV-2. The arrows on the left are pointing to what we call B cell epitopes. They mostly on the surface. And when a virus mutates the way these variants do, it causes changes that interfere very, very easily with the binding of antibodies. We see this specifically impressive with monoclonal antibodies. So a single mutation, for example, might nullify the effect of a monoclonal antibody. You go to the right-hand part of the slide, and then those parts that are reacted to by T cells, which we refer to as T cell epitopes, they are on the surface, but they're also buried. The changes that affect an antibody do not nearly impact as much T cell recognition. And that is absolutely critical, because that's one of the reasons why when you have variants that change, in fact, you still have protection against hospitalization, because T cells, as I mentioned a moment ago, protect more against progression of disease. Next slide. This slide actually tells you that, because if you look at either the left or the right, when you go from one variant to another, there's a great deal of conservation of these T cell epitopes, so that even though the variant changes, either a vaccine or a prior infection can give you protection against the various variants. And then on the next slide, this slide just merely shows papers that many of you have read about, that vaccination can induce memory able to cross-react all the variants from alpha to beta to delta to Omicron. Next slide. Same thing with laboratory studies that T cells induced from vaccination or prior infection seem to hold up well. Next slide. Now, getting back to what Dr. Walensky said, these are data from the UK. She showed us data from the United States. They're very similar. If you look at just symptomatic infection on the left, 2 doses of an mRNA, and this is Omicron, 2 to 4 weeks later, have a 65 to 70% protection. But as Dr. Walensky showed, if you look about 10 weeks later, you have only a 30%. When you give a boost, you bring that up 65 to 70 and 45 to 50. But the important part of the slide is on the right with the red. When you look at 2 doses plus a boost, you get very good, durable protection against hospitalization. That is the important key issue. Next slide. So what's the bottom line of what I've said? Protection against SARS-CoV-2 infection is mediated mostly by antibodies that are generally short-lived. Variants with extensive mutations easily escape protection from infection, which is the reason why you saw the data that Dr. Walensky showed you. But protection against severe disease is mediated predominantly by memory B cells and CD4, CD8 T cells. These are longer lived and more broadly reactive. And so the current vaccines, particularly with regard to boosting the current regimens, continue to induce immune responses that provide strong protection against severe disease, hospital, and death. Therefore, final slide, the same message that Dr. Walensky gave you. Get your vaccinations up to date. It is essential for your protection. Back to you, Jeff.
Well, thank you, doctors. Before we turn to questions, I want to provide some perspective on where we stand. As you've heard the doctors say, Omicron is an extremely transmissible variant that has driven an unprecedented number of cases in recent weeks. But as a nation, we're in a far different place than we were this time last year. 210 million Americans are fully vaccinated and therefore protected from serious illness, especially, as the doctors have said, if they've received a booster shot. 96% of K through 12 schools are open for in-person learning, up from just 46% this time last year. And we're coming off the greatest year of job growth in American history, an amazing economic turnaround. The reason this January is so dramatically different from last January is because we have the tools we need to protect people. And because President Biden and his administration have acted aggressively to follow the science and deploy these tools. And because so many Americans have done the right thing and taken the steps to protect themselves, their families, and their communities. As we recognized from the start, vaccines are the single most important tool we have in the fight against this virus. We established a nationwide vaccination program that's gotten more than 500 million shots in arms. Today, nearly 75% of adults are fully vaccinated. That's up from just 1% at this time last year. And importantly, we keep driving additional progress with about 9 million more shots going into arms each week. On testing, we've increased manufacturing capacity by making multi-billion-dollar investments and deploying the Defense Production Act. And we've created new streamlined pathways to get tests authorized more quickly. As a result, we've gone from 0 at-home tests when the president took office to having 375 million tests available in January alone. And now private health insurance covers the cost of at-home tests. And you can order at-home tests to be delivered to your home for free. On treatments, we've stocked the nation's medicine cabinet so that we have more effective treatments available now than at any other point in the pandemic. Importantly, including Pfizer's antiviral pill, a game changer that helps keep people out of the hospital. We've secured 20 million treatment courses of the Pfizer antiviral pill for the American people. And working closely with Pfizer, we accelerated the delivery of these pills. We continue to take additional steps to ensure that Americans have what they need to protect themselves, including by making hundreds of millions of N95 masks available for free to all Americans. This is the largest deployment of personal protective equipment in U.S. history. We've already shipped millions of these masks out, and across the coming days, masks will begin to be available at local pharmacies and community health centers across the country. So we've come a long way in our fight against the virus. Across the last year, we've provided multiple layers of protection for people: vaccines, boosters, tests, masks, and treatments. And even as we face the extremely transmissible Omicron, we see that these tools are working. In fact, fully vaccinated individuals are 16 times less likely to be hospitalized from COVID compared to those who are unvaccinated. And schools and businesses are open. As the president says, we know the job is not yet finished. But because of how many people we've gotten vaccinated, the country is in a much stronger position to face Omicron and to deal with COVID going forward. And because of the administration's actions, we're moving toward a time when COVID won't disrupt our daily lives, where COVID won't be a constant crisis, but something we protect against and treat. We're not there yet, but the president's COVID plan is clearly working. And we're confident we'll continue to make progress and get to where we all want to be. With that, let's open it up for some questions. Over to you, Kevin.
Thanks, Jeff. Happy Friday, everybody. We'll get through as many questions as we can. First question, let's go to Tamara Keith at NPR.
Thanks so much for taking my question. I know that COVID tests have begun to ship out to people's homes. I'm wondering how many have gone out, and as well, at this point, what is the government supply like? Have the supplies come from the warehouse companies? Have they come from Abbott and iHealth? Are you satisfied with the pace of deliveries to the government?
So thank you for the question. Tests started shipping yesterday. We're hearing stories of some already arriving today. The day after the website launched was midweek, so we started shipping right away. We've made clear to the testing manufacturers that has been contracted with that as quickly as they deliver tests, we will get them out to the American people. The Postal Service is moving incredibly fast here. They are packing and shipping tests immediately as they arrive. Tens of millions of tests have arrived so far. It's an all-hands-on-deck effort. And as we get a clearer picture of the demand of orders through the website and shipments after this initial wave, we'll have a better sense and we'll report those numbers next week. I want to continue to emphasize that people need a test immediately. We continue to encourage them to utilize one of the many testing options that are out there in addition to the website. 20,000 community-based testing sites nationwide, federal surge sites, dozens of which have opened in the last few weeks, are online and are being set up across the country. Many state and local governments have local distribution of free tests, and tests from online retailers and pharmacies, as we talked about earlier, are now covered by private insurance for free. Next question.
Go to Josh Wingrove at Bloomberg.
Thank you very much. Jeff, just to clarify then, do you have a number on how many people have requested tests, and have you heard many complaints around that issue that people are having where they don't enter their apartment number correctly, it shows up as tests already having been claimed? And more broadly, Dr. Walensky, can you expand a little bit more on what you said, how we're seeing peaks in some cities, other cities earlier in their curves? Does that mean that you think we're going to see national caseloads more or less as they are now, or is it just going to sort of trail off but not go down as steeply as it came up? What is the expectation as of now for the sort of overall national curve on Omicron? Thank you.
You got to wear a mask when you're on the phone now? Good Lord.
Every resident in an apartment is able to order a test. U.S. Postal Service is seeing a very limited number of cases where addresses that are not registered as multi-unit buildings within its database, and they're working to fix that issue and are helping people through that process. But I want to emphasize it's a very, very small percent of people who live in apartment buildings. We will make sure that those people get tests for free. And as we work through the issue, people can fill out a service request on the website, or you can call the hotline on the USPS, United States Postal Service website to get the issue fixed. Over to you, Dr. Walensky.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. So we are starting to see steep declines in areas that were first peaking. So areas of the Northeast, New York, Rhode Island, Connecticut are really starting to come down. That also means that some areas are higher than they had been before, but overall, nationally, the case numbers are coming down, which I consider an optimistic trend.
Next question.
Let's go to Theo Meyer at the Washington Post.
Thanks for taking my question. Can you hear me here?
Try again.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. Can you hear me here?
Yes.
Thanks. Celine Gounder, Zeke Emanuel, and Rick Bright published a piece yesterday arguing that the U.S. should move toward tracking COVID, influenza, RSV, and other viral respiratory infections as a whole and make decisions about the pandemic based on hospitalizations and deaths from all such infections rather than just on COVID numbers alone. Is the CDC considering, taking such an approach? And what are the barriers, if any, in terms of data to doing so?
Dr. Walensky.
So the CDC already collects data on influenza, RSV, and other respiratory illnesses. We have for years now, and we are obviously collecting data on COVID. As we are moving forward, we are closely watching the severity of disease, how our hospitals are doing. One important thing to note is that our absolute number of case counts is a really good indicator as to how our hospitals will be doing in the weeks ahead. So that is why we've been tracking that number as well.
Next question.
Let's go to Meg Torrell at CNBC.
Well, thanks. A question for Dr. Fauci about vaccines for kids under 5. We've been hearing a lot about the Pfizer vaccine and the setback that they had adding the third dose. And so now we're expecting data, at least we heard at a recent ACIP meeting, maybe end of March, early April. Moderna recently said they expect data in 2 to 5-year-olds in March. I'm wondering your expectations for that vaccine, given it's a higher dose, and also just generally how we should think about what the data will look like and take into account regarding Omicron being the predominant variant now. Will they need to show neutralizing antibody data against Omicron too?
Well, the broad answer to your question, Meg, is that the FDA will gather the data that will be presented to them by the company and will make a decision regarding the safety and the efficacy of this particular product. I don't foresee any differences in the differentiation of the effectiveness or not against the different variants between the adults and younger children at various age. And Dr. Walensky just gave you a very nice delineation of what the effectiveness is against Omicron, and I did in my own presentation. I don't see any fundamental differences there, but I think the bottom line, because people keep asking this question, this will occur, and this will or will not get an EUA from the FDA based on what they do very well, to very meticulously go over the data for safety and efficacy and make an appropriate decision. So when they do that, it will come out and we will know the answer.
Next question.
Let's go to Caitlin Collins, CNN.
Thanks so much. 2 questions. Jeff, just want to follow on Josh's question because I didn't hear an answer, which is how many households have requested the test? And if you don't have that number, can you explain why you guys aren't disclosing that? Secondly, for Dr. Walensky, you talked about the millions of Americans who have yet to get a booster. Less than half of those who are eligible to get booster shots have done so. And so given what these numbers show, this new data about how important a booster shot is, can you explain, I know you've talked about this before, but can you explain why the CDC is not changing the definition of fully vaccinated, given that could potentially encourage more people to get a third shot?
So, Caitlin, demand has been high in the first few days, households around the country are clearly ordering tests and completing the process quickly. As you said, the website is working well, and I know from personal experience that that's not an easy feat to pull off in a short period of time, but fortunately the website is working smoothly. We already have millions of completed orders through the website, and those numbers keep increasing each and every day. As we get through this initial wave of ordering and it winds down next week, we'll pull the numbers together and we'll give you a fuller picture of the number of tests ordered, and we'll report that number publicly. Over to you, Dr. Walensky.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Caitlin. So, in public health for all vaccines, we've talked about being up to date for your vaccines. Every year you need a flu shot. You're not up to date with your flu shot until you've gotten your flu shot for that year. And what we really are working to do is pivot the language to make sure that everybody is as up to date with their COVID-19 vaccines as they personally should be based on when they got their last vaccine. So importantly, right now we're pivoting our language. We really want to make sure people are up to date. That means if you recently got your second dose, you're not eligible for a booster, you're up to date. If you are eligible for a booster and you haven't gotten it, you're not up to date, and you need to get your booster in order to be up to date.
Next question.
All right, couple more questions. Let's go to Cheryl Stolberg, New York Times.
Thank you for taking my questions. I have two questions that I think are on a lot of Americans' minds. First, many people who are vaccinated and have nonetheless gotten infected with Omicron want to know if they are protected against Omicron, and if so, for how long? And second, Jeff, you talked about COVID. We're heading to a place where COVID won't be a constant crisis, but something we protect against and treat. And I'm wondering, I guess this is for both Dr. Fauci and Dr. Walensky, what is your best guess about what the next 6 months will look like with respect to COVID-19? And if you don't know, could you please lay out several possible different scenarios? I think many Americans want to know what to expect.
I want to start with you, Dr. Fauci.
Well, in answer to your last question, Cheryl, we don't know, but what one does when you have a situation where you don't know, because we have also had the experience, as you know, of the unpredictability of things like what happened with Delta and what happened with Omicron. So you put together a best case scenario and a worst case scenario. What's the best case scenario? The best case scenario is that the description that Dr. Walensky just gave us about the diminution in cases in many regions of the country will continue to go down to a baseline level that is a level of what we call adequate control. Namely, it's not disruptive of what we do. And the combination of vaccinated and boosted people and the protection afforded by prior infection will have a level of protection in the community so that you won't get the situation where there's enough activity which leads to hospitalizations, deaths, and stressing the healthcare system, which in fact answers a bit of your first question, Cheryl, about what about Omicron? If you get infected, can you get infected again? Sure, there are reinfections, but it is unlikely that if you mount a good immune response, at least over a period of several months, it is extremely unlikely that you will be reinfected with the same variant. We've seen reinfections, but those are mostly in people who've been infected with Alpha, who then wind up getting reinfected with Beta or reinfected with Omicron. That's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is something we have to be prepared for. And that is we do get down to a level that we would say would be adequate control, but we're faced with another surprise with a variant that's so different that it eludes the accumulation of the immune protection that we've gotten from vaccinations and from prior infections. I hope that doesn't happen. I can't give you a statistics of what the chance of that happen, but we have to be prepared for it. So we hope for the best and prepare for the worst.
Yeah, the thing I would add.
So is that what we're doing next? We're going to have a variant that's so different that we're going to start all over again?
As Dr. Fauci has talked about before, to change the vaccines if we ever need to fight a new variant. So we have the tools to make sure that we are able to continue to operate businesses, keep our schools open, just as we've done through this surge in cases. This is so different than a year ago. And going forward, we have that toolkit, and we'll continue to expand that toolkit to make sure that we can deal with any scenario. Next
Other
question.
thing, Cheryl, if I could add one other thing, Cheryl, and that is one of the reasons I gave the presentation about the conservation of epitopes on the slide that had all those red circles in them really answers in part your question. Because if we get another variant, the background immunity, together with the fact that we likely will boost against a different variant, should provide the protection that Jeff is talking about, where even a new variant, given the tools we have, does not disrupt us as much as we would have been disrupted if we didn't have the vaccines in the first place, not to mention the therapies that will be available.
Okay, Kevin.
Last question. Let's go to Zeke at the AP.
Thanks for doing this. Dr. Walensky, as cases in some of those areas, as you mentioned, begin to come down, what is the current CDC guidance for municipalities and states in terms of relaxing some of the restrictions that have been put in place to control the Omicron spread? Is it the same as it was for the other variants going into moderate community spread and lower to remove masks, or is the CDC eyeing a different threshold given all that we know about Omicron seemingly being less severe for those who are vaccinated compared to earlier strains?
Yeah, thank you, Zeke. So let me just say, cases are coming down. They have just started to crest in some of these places and started to come down. We still are at extraordinarily high levels of disease in almost all of the places, even in areas where cases are starting to come down. Places that we are still recommending public indoor masking. Again, cases are still well higher than the threshold to start thinking about taking off some of those measures.
Everybody, I hope everybody has a good weekend. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Well, they just let us know in the future we're gonna have a variant so scary. We'll just have to do the whole pandemic over again. We'll just have to start back, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Can't wait to hear that again. It'll be like old times. Old Man Walter is supposed to speak in 10 minutes. I don't know if we're going to cover it or not because they are still doing that march in D.C. I do plan on covering that, but I would like to get some food to eat before we cover it. So what we're going to do is we're going to shut this live down, especially because we had something happen. We had buffering or something happen and half the audience walked away. So we're going to shut this down. I'm going to try and get something to eat really quick and then go live with the nonsense going on in Washington, D.C. So big shout out to everyone that made donations, joined the membership program, or purchased any merch. I really appreciate all of you, and I wouldn't be able to do this without you. So thank you so much for being here. Let's shout everybody out. Thank you so much, Israel, Jason, Fans Guy, Mark Hill, Leonardo, Destiny Gal, 69 a drummer, and Lisa. Thank you so much for your donations and your support. I really appreciate you guys. If you haven't joined the Discord, definitely join the Discord. It is free. Download the app on your phone or access it through a computer. Come to any of my lives. Follow the link either on the link tree or in the description. And then follow the few simple steps. You'll be greeted with an automated message letting you know that you've done all you need to do in order to receive notifications for when and where we go live, no matter where we go live. So definitely join the Discord. Yeah. I think that's it. So I'm going to get some food, and then we're going to see what's going on in Washington, D.C. Appreciate you guys being here. You guys are super awesome, as always. So I'll see you on the next live. Until then, stand tall, shine bright, and that's a wrap.